Thank you for joining us all today for this session. We're going to use this panel as a bit of a candid deep dive opportunity to talk about the smart building refurbishment we did at our headquarter site in Hoddesdon, because we're pretty proud of what we managed to achieve, bearing in mind it was 25 plus years old when we started and we kept completely operational, functional, with a lot of headaches, but we got there in the end. So we're going to have a deep dive of that. I've invited along the experts that made it possible. So without further ado, let me introduce them to you. So over on the far side, we've got Edward Williams. He's the founder and director of Fanium 9. And they basically specialize in the software of control systems, integrations, and there's all kinds of really cool things that Ed made happen, which I'm sure would not have been possible without him. Then you have Michael Leaf, who's the founder and director of MGL Projects, who were the design and build contractor that we chose to do this project because they specialize in doing high intensity, working with difficult clients, shall I say. So no one was better suited to the job than Mike, in my opinion. Then we have Dan Drogman, CEO and founder of Smart Spaces. To be honest, if you don't know who they are, you probably shouldn't be sat in here. They're probably the most premier smart space OS platform and one of the reasons we chose them to work with us. We have Bruno Morelli from Custom Intelligent Security. They're an independent enterprise security specialist and contractor, and we trusted them with making our site secure. So really exciting integrations as well that Bruno's team have managed to pull off. And Mario, who I'd like to say needs no introduction as one of the founders of Simmtronic, but he also took on the role of project manager for this job. And anyone that knows Mario's sense of fashion knows that he is incredibly picky. So yeah, this is the team he put together to do the job. So smart lighting was obviously going to be a given with who we are. But if we're 100% honest, when we started the project, there was a lot of scope creep. So I'd like to start with the question of, bearing in mind what we've achieved, if you could start again from the beginning, and we'll probably start with Mario, because it's your building at the end of the day, what would you do differently, if anything?
What would I do differently? Well, I would have had a proper master plan to begin with, to be honest. The way it originally started was that we knew we had to refurbish the building to make it better for the staff and put some more smart tech in, but it hadn't been touched, as Jess said, in 30 years. And I didn't have all the directors on the side. I mean, I was the keen one, and I got two others that were, well, what are we doing? So we started off as a small plan to upgrade the Unit 1, which is a sales office, and basically breakout spaces, and the tech area, and that would enable us to get into the factory, because the original plan was just to upgrade the factory because it needed a lot of work. Then we called that phase one, why that had started, MJL, Mike and Paul, we then started creating a master plan on if we did want to do the whole site, what could we do? And that's when it got quite interesting because we had a really good plan. Obviously, the price went up quite a bit as we started developing that.
I think it's only fair to let Michael defend the price comment.
No, it wasn't because of Mike. It's because of what we've done. And then the main thing, though, was because of the industry that we're in, I wanted to put all the tech in that we normally come across on a building in London. 22 Bishopsgate's been talked about a lot. We've done that. We've done it with Genetech, and you got Custom here that do the security. So we wanted to put all the equipment in to be able to export information out so the different pieces of equipment could talk to each other.
We'll pass them.
So
let's hear from the contractor, because obviously you had to deal with those decisions, Mike. What was it like? What would you do differently?
It wasn't the easiest moving forward, but we also understood that for Simmtronic to have faith in us to move forward, we had to start in a smaller area. So we picked the smaller areas, being all of the staff's main facilities. So their breakout area, their canteen, their toilets, upgrade those so that they could then also buy into this master plan. Because as much as the director's buying in from a cost point of view, you need the whole company to buy in what you're about to do to their building and how you move around it. So yeah, the costs did go up quite considerably, but when you look at the master plan and where we then brought it back down to and still managed to incorporate all of this smart technology, it's pretty incredible on everyone's part involved.
I'd say probably some of the biggest scope creep was probably in Dan and Ed's areas. So let's start with Ed and work back to Dan. Ed, would you have done anything differently?
I think if we had thought about it, maybe we would have unified manufacturers across the space. Simmtronic is quite unique that it has Mitsubishi Electric, Mitsubishi Heavy, Fujitsu, and Daikin. So there's a range of different manufacturers, which obviously creates integration work, perhaps unnecessarily, because you can't just copy and paste and scale through the building.
What about you, Dan?
Well, thanks to Ed, I was in a great place because essentially he just served up one MQTT interface to our cloud, and so we take all the glory for Ed's hard work because he's the one there trying to work out how to map the Fujitsu versus the Mitsi versus the Daikin. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for him, making us look good.
And Bruno, there's obviously been a bit of development in the security side. Did you do anything differently if you did it again?
Yeah. Mario mentions a master plan, which is that an Oasis pun? I don't know. It's good. Good if it was. We'd had no master plan, and Mario come to me. I've known Mario for 6 or 7 years, and he entrusted us. It started off with, I just need a bit of CCTV at the new HQ we're doing, and it's ended up with a 3D model with MQTT, Genetec talking to different multiple sensors, and it's just developed. And I don't think I'll change it. No lessons learned, but because when we get together and we sit around the table, it really does push the boundaries on what we are achieving, especially with our systems.
All right. Okay. So speaking as being one of the end users, one of the things I've actually found pretty game changing, and this is a bit of a shameless plug for smart spaces, is the Apple ID thing, because I am notorious for losing passes, credit cards, wallet, anything like that. But I will never lose my phone. So I now always have access to my building, which is great. I've lost 2 passes so far. This is huge for me, but it got me wondering, is there anything else, and we'll start with Dan, that people are asking you for that they then think, oh, this is great, this is really turntable for me?
Well, certainly I think your car park needs to be looked at. So I think we could certainly do some AMPR and barrier and control management. I'm always blocking someone in. So I think that's where I'd start. I think, we can do some really nice asset tracking. I think that, you've got a lot of expensive material in your factory. And I think asset tracking could be deployed quite effectively with the technology you have there. And then I think, the resource booking and looking what departments are using the space. One of the nice features we've built recently is like this VIP, where if you use the space more than 4 times a week, you get a dedicated logger and a dedicated desk for that time. But if you then relax back to 2 days, that gets released again. So it just rewards the people who actually use the space the most and get the most convenience by having all their stuff in one place and not having to clear their desk every night. So there's lots of great stuff. I think integrating with a coffee machine will be a good one because, it'd be good to know who's using all the milk and all the coffee beans. I think there's one guy in the office does about 6 coffees a day. Won't mention any names. There's plenty more to come.
All right. What about you, Bruno? What do you guys get asked for in the security world?
Obviously, Apple Wallet is huge now, mobile credentials. I think we are moving away from single-use plastics. You mentioned people don't lose their phones. But building I'll call it a community around the credential, and what Smart Spaces is phenomenal at is not just the vehicle for an Apple Wallet credential, it's actually building the community. So we use the app, it's our social wall. So we've got a Macmillan's coffee morning like next week. We can post that to all our staff so they're aware. It's just a great way and a much more modern way of communicating with your workforce.
I mean, I got another question for you, actually. So when we were, Bruno, we decided to go full scale, biggest smart security. You went, it's got to be Genetec. Was there a reason you said Genetec?
Yeah, well, they're here.
Other than them being sat here?
No, no. Obviously, this was a year, 18 months in the making. We've championed Genetec for sort of 6 years, and the reason why is because it's pioneering. It's run by a visionary that knows exactly where the marketplace is going. It's open protocol. It's a connected ecosystem of your video, your access control, your intercoms, and you can bring in intruder. It's a single pane of glass that we've heard a lot today, but because of the abilities, because it's a software house, not a manufacturer, it develops software. It's perfect for this ecosystem and dealing with when we worked with our first project. Genetec hadn't heard of Smart Spaces, and I don't think you would have heard of Genetec. And it was a marriage. It was the two worlds colliding. Brilliant.
Nice. I mean, what about you, Ed? As an MSI in principle, what do you get asked for the most feature-wise? What excites you?
I think the main feature we get asked is to optimize the building assets so that we reduce energy consumption and wear and tear on the hardware. That's basically what we do.
Michael? What do you guys get asked for nowadays when you're building stuff?
How can we have more for less money and still be able to achieve everything that everyone's got here? So for us, it's like, Kian, I know we're working through in the background just to show what that additional cost actually amounted to that pushed this towards being the smart building that it is, and what the return on investment is. Because most companies that we deal with fitting out buildings up to the £5 million size, they're thinking, oh, that's a hell of a lot of money to spend. So it's about them understanding that it is possible for still in a founder-led operation to be able to achieve what the likes of 22 Bishopsgate are.
Okay, so you've just touched on cost, which as a commercial person is my favourite subject. So it's always a factor. That's just a sad reality, isn't it? Like, we can't always afford the tech we want. Many times we want a Ferrari, but we're only willing to buy a Fiat. So I'm interested in your take on value engineering, because all of you are at the sharp end of this, but Michael, as a main contractor, probably a bit more than most. How can we help clients to be a little bit more concentrated on how they're going to get the best possible operational building rather than concentrating too hard on capital expenditure? Like, what kind of things do you do to try and get them on the journey a little bit?
Well, the first thing is, as Mario first alluded to, if you have a master plan, it really, really helps, because then you can work out where it is. But it's also been able to pull out all of those single line items and say where there's a genuine return on investment. It's very easy for somebody to say, I need £200,000 knocked off something. But if you turn around and say, okay, you're going to walk into a white room, there's going to be nothing else, they can visualize it. Whereas if they to explain to them what the value add is for all the systems that you can put in, it's explaining to them the benefit of it. And the really simple analogy is, if somebody leaves that light switch on every single night, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And if you look at that across the entire business, there's a payback on everything that you guys are installing.
Okay, because I feel like, Ed, we spoke recently and you said people often comment about software costs being quite high. How do you sort of convince them into the long-term benefit of having the software when it seems like a big capex?
Yeah, so it was recently talking to a quantity surveyor for another project, and they asked us why are our costs so high? And I gave them the scenario that when we previously wrote software for a Switzerland bank, that we managed to reduce the support staff from 15 people down to 5, which would save them typically 500k a year. So investing in the software up front and putting more intelligent software solutions into the building managed to save them vast amounts of cash through the operational expenditure.
Okay, what about Dan? I mean, you must come up against this all the time, because I'm sure everyone sees smart spaces. They want smart spaces. Do they want to pay for smart spaces?
Yeah, I think they do. It's testament to the customers we have and the projects we work on. But I think what it is because we work for the most valuable person, which is the customer and the user of the building. And without them, the building doesn't need to exist. And they're the most relevant person. And I think, look, there's a lot of smart technology out there that serves the engineer and serves the people managing the space. But there's not an awful lot of technology that serves the person using the space. And I think because people derive so much value from that and actually improve their asset and get more money from their asset. And, so many of our clients now are monetizing features. You pay for rooms on demand, you pay for desks on demand, you pay for your lunch, you can have all your lunch bills for your whole company billed to you monthly, but they can claim it in the app at any one time. There's revenue streams that come back into the building from deploying the tech. But at the end of the day, you're looking after the most important person and understanding what they're doing with your building. And we install stuff in buildings. Then when we look at the analytics, it hasn't worked as well as we thought it would. Let's change it. Let's adapt it. And that's what we're so excited about with your building, is that you're going to see that and see those things that we can continually improve on and increase your employee satisfaction, which is one of the highest measures you're going to have in your business.
I mean, Mario, is there anywhere where you've saved money since the smart building deployment that you've been pleasantly surprised?
Well, we spent a lot of money deploying it, but to be honest with you, the software costs that we did incur with Ed doing what he had to do with the head-end Tritium programming since April, because we put current sensors on all the disboards, and we even put temperature sensors on all the MVHRs, the input and output, to measure the efficiency. From April, we've managed to do quite a lot of tweaking and playing with the different services. We've saved 30% roughly in electricity, and that's just initial settings and stuff, looking at how people use the space, how the areas are used, changing the timings, set points and stuff like that. So there's an awful lot more we could do.
What about some productivity increases? Because Ed's done a pretty snazzy integration. When it gets too much CO2 in an area, he starts pumping fresh air in to wake people back up, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, in a couple of areas, we did introduce our new environmental sensor, where it did quite a lot of work in measuring CO2, temperature, humidity, all that sort of stuff. And if it, I think, rose above 900 parts per million, we started pumping more fresh air in, because we realised there was a couple of areas where we could actually tell by looking at the data if there was one girl in a room, 2 girls, 3 girls, or 4 girls, and it's a 6-person office. It actually climbs up really high. And we've done quite a lot of work on that. And I'm amazed that it's actually working really well, to be honest with you. It does keep them awake in the afternoon.
Bruno, what do you get from people when, because I'm assuming people come to custom because they want the best security. What about when they don't want to pay for it? Well, how do you sort of talk them into what they are saying that they need?
I think in our world, we're all about security and keeping people safe fundamentally. Obviously, with smart spaces, that's the sort of softer side of our industry. But fundamentally, we're a security platform to make sure, A, we're cyber resilient, and also we're keeping people safe within their working environment. So in terms of value engineering, where I see it going is, I think we have lost a lot of less parts, but more functionality. And I'll give you an example where maybe a camera was traditionally 5 years ago would just be a camera recording CCTV footage. Now you've got a camera with audio analytics, environmental sensors built into it, heat mapping. So it's changing. You don't need these other sensors where one sensor can capture that information. You have access control readers with QR code cameras in there. You can have destination control via your phone rather than having a big tablet in front of the lift. It's functionality within products that's just got to expand. I think you'll get more functionality.
I don't know if the tech could press play on the video for me just before I finish on my last question, because the thing won't do it. Can someone press play on the video for us? Just to give you a insight into what the space actually looks like, because we're going to finish on a high. And I'd just like each of you to tell us what your shining stars were for you on the project. What did you really enjoy? What really stood out for you? So start with Mario.
What stood out for me, I think, seeing the look on all our staff's faces when they first walked back into the spaces that we just converted. That was quite good for me, to be honest.
I echo what Mario said. I think you have to walk around the space and see the people interactive in the areas. I enjoy visiting Simmtronic. I think it's testament to your brand.
It's the food, really, isn't it, Bruno?
No, we've done the same at our HQ. It's about your brand. It's not a closed shop behind the scenes. You live and breathe what your vision is, and I think it's a phenomenal space. Well done to everyone involved.
Sorry to be the cheesy one, but it's working with you guys and girls. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. And it's all about the culture of the business, and you're an open-minded business that wants to utilize technology to make yourselves better. And because the whole company believes in that, anything we've asked of you to do, you've done in like a heartbeat. There's so many clients sometimes just push against us, and we're like, but we're trying to achieve what you want to achieve. Why make it so difficult? And when you're working with open-minded people like you, I think we've achieved an awful lot in a very short period of time. Albeit Ed's probably done a lot of the heavy lifting with the MGL boys.
For me, it's just such a colossal change in space. When you saw what it was before and you start going around, you speaking to the staff, and you see how everybody works differently, when you watch people work, and we went through, for example, the factory refurbishment, and they're going from one end of the factory to the other, and now everything is where it needs to be. And the highlight of the whole project visually is actually, for me, is that you can stand in the sales office and see through every department, through the glass, all the way through to the factory, and follow the journey all the way through.
Mario does enjoy that. What about you, Ed? What's the biggest achievement for you?
So for me, it's about the opportunity to integrate with all the toys, and what I mean by that is all the hardware, all the sensors, all the bits of kit in there. And I had quite a fun chopping up brand new Fujitsu mechanical ventilation heat recovery units, and changing all the relays and the wiring so that we could do parts per million control from the Simmtronic's SPQ7 sensor. So it was just like a real playground for me to get stuck in.
Okay, and I'll finish it. I think my favourite thing actually probably is the canteen, which is the sort of Starbucks-esque looking cafe area that you might have seen at the start. Because I can tell you right now, the previous canteen was the dingiest space you've ever been in, and nobody went in there unless it was to get through there to get to the bathroom. So I think what MGL managed to do in creating the vibe of the space, I mean, you'll see it come back up right now. It's now used by everybody. People even choose to work there. Like I get commissioning come in, they've got dedicated hot desk bank, and they'd rather work in there because it's more similar to the Starbucks they're used to, like cafe hopping in. So yeah, that's one of my favorite things, is seeing people actually like to be in the office rather than hang out at home. And that's what's been quite hard actually after COVID, is giving somewhere people a space that they actually want to come back to. So I think that's about us for time, but these guys are hanging around here. You probably won't catch Dan, but try. So yeah, if you've got any questions, please come up and ask us. We are quite open book about what we've done. We're pretty proud of it, worked with a lot of people. Yeah, feel free to ask us questions.